Plots and prophecy. Magnus withdraws his power. Afflicting the psyker with portents of doom is child's play, but lingering for too long risks drawing the attention of the Emperor and perhaps unraveling the intricate works behind the Imperium's crusade. So Lorgar says. Magnus' doubt has not lessened. The Primarch of the Thousand Suns drifts back through the warp, returning to the crone world of the Eldar once more. There is a pause before he steps back through the portal to real space, Lorgar's attendants awaiting him as the Primarch of the Word-Bearers meditated. Your message has been sent, Magnus said. Though such manipulations make me wonder why you've turned me into a glorified errand boy. Only the greatest of psykers could hope to do this without risk of discovery, Magnus. Lorgar replied, still not rising to face Magnus. Truly, I thank you for your contributions. When all is said and done, your reward shall be far beyond even the shining halls of Prospero. Magnus said nothing, watching as Lorgar finished his incantation and rose to face him. The 10th gate rests within the path of the Great Devourer and the Emperor. When both have been fully committed, I shall advance the next stage of my plan. And conducting a demonic ritual beneath the Emperor's nose is less likely to attract her attention. Magnus asked. From a limited perspective of the warp, yes. Lorgar countered, giving Magnus an unpleasant smile. Or did you think my discussion with you all those months ago meant nothing? But coming from one that understands nothing of subtlety, you miss your true opportunity. Both Magnus and Lorgar turned as a new figure approached. He was just barely taller than a regular Astaroth's, clad in blue and green armor untainted by the effects of the warp. I thought I told you to leave. Lorgar snapped, turning to face the newcomer. I have no desire for your petty games, Alpharius. You say that, but I know well enough that there is more than just the power of the warp that you seek. Alpharius replied, circling the two other Primarches as he continued. Even with the knowledge you have, the Emperor is not a target you can easily assail. There is a spark that follows after her, drawn by her knowledge of power. Ignore the spark, and it will consume all that you have planned. Magnus raised an eyebrow at this, but said nothing as Lorgar continued. There is nothing that I have not anticipated, Lorgar said. The Tyranids, the Orcs, the forces of our brothers, all has moved to where I have commanded it to be. You would squander such intricate plans for what? A minor victory followed by crushing defeat. You misinterpret my intentions, Lorgar. Alpharius countered. I come not to critique your strategy, but to offer knowledge of tools you may have forgotten. What sort of tools? Magnus asked. Well, it is good to see one among us still listens. The Primarch of the Alpha Legion pulled something from the shadows, flipping it open to reveal a holographic display. Deep within the bowels of the Grand Collection lies a blade of great power, one that can strike even the greatest of man with a fatal blow. An Anatheim blade? Magnus asked. I had thought they were destroyed during the heresy. Most were, but one survived. Alpharius looked to Lorgar. You know the one I speak of. The one your minion stole to smite Horus and start the Long War. That blade was lost when Fulgrim ascended to daemonhood. Lorgar scoffed. You bore me with discussions on weapons that are of no use to anyone but remembrancers and codicils. Did Fulgrim tell you it was destroyed? There was a pause before Alpharius withdrew the display. The Anatheim is very much intact, waiting in the halls of Azeno's lord for its master to recover it. I know where it is, and I will bring it to you for your war against the Imperium. And what do you wish in return? Lorgar asked. No one would be so willing to hand over such a powerful weapon without something to gain from it. Do we truly live in an age where a simple gift must come with a catch? Alpharius asked. But as it stands, the vaults where the Anatheim are located are rather heavily guarded. I will need some assistance in holding off those forces while I steal the sword. A few hundred legionnaires should be more than enough to compensate for such power. No. Your own operatives are not enough. Lorgar scoffed again. What do I care? Take what you need and get out of my sight, and do not return until you have the blade. In time, brother. With that the other Primarch began to fade into the darkness. Or were your speeches on patience merely for our benefit and not yours? Magnus watched Alpharius depart, but even with his powers he could not see the Alpha Legion Primarch slip away completely. Knowing Alpharius, he is equally likely to name you to the blade and kill you as he is to give it to you. Magnus said, looking to Lorgar. Bah! Alfarius' little schemes never come to anything more than a costly annoyance. Lorgar said. If he produces the Anat-Haim, then we have a potent weapon in our grasp. If he does not, he removes himself from my presence and allows us time to truly plan. See to it that your confidence does not become your undoing, Lorgar. Magnus said, turning to leave Lorgar. Leaving so soon, brother? Lorgar asked. I had thought you would like to stay and witness my grand demonstration firsthand. I have other matters to attend to. Magnus said as he opened another warp portal. When your demonstration is complete, then perhaps there will be more to discuss. With that, Magnus stepped back into the warp, not stopping as the swirling tides close in around him. His journey takes him back across the galaxy, searching once more for the fleet preparing for transit within the southern reaches of the Imperium. Finding the light is not difficult, the Emperor's presence shines like a beacon, blinding even among the darkness and currents of the warp. Magnus pays it no mind, drifting beneath its currents as he searches for the spark of Alfarius' musings. He finds the psyker he had afflicted. She has been moved to a different ship, away from the Empress but still too close for the Primarch to approach undetected. For what it was worth, as his glimpses into the young woman's mind revealed nothing of interest. A useful tool, perhaps, but no real threat. It is the woman watching over her that catches Magnus' attention. She is a young woman, shorter and clad in lavender armor radiating with psychic energy. A short probe brushes against the edges of her psychic perception, Magnus furrowing his brow as he examines the woman. She is powerful, perceptive even, but still just a mortal in the eyes of the gods. And yet there is an air around her, a hidden aura that drifts even beyond Magnus' sight. He probes closer, brushing ever so gently against the girl's power, but the source of the aura remains muddled. What is it that makes you so important? Magnus asks. You are a child in the eyes of the Emperor, what difference do you matter? The girl would not respond, but Magnus does not need her answer, not yet. Instead he watches, and waits. Angelique had been transferred back to the Sanguinium Martyrs, so Bianca could better sedate her until the visions ceased. Terra had accompanied them, hovering over the young psyker as the hospitaller and her new understudy worked. She had even offered to use some of her own powers to calm Angelique, reasoning that a more powerful and learned psyker might be enough to cut through the visions and clear her mind. Mashes had been tempted to agree to the plan, but decided against it. The last thing he needed was for Terra to get pulled into Angelique's visions. You must be willing to trust Terra with her powers, the Empress said when Mashes had explained during his debrief. She has come a long way since our first encounters on Caesarea. I'm sure she has, but with all due respect to both you and Terra, I would like to conduct such tests in a more controlled environment. Mashes replied. Visions of Tyranid attacks tend to be a bit more contagious than others, and drawing Terra in might not be the best for her sanity. You underestimate her power, but I understand your concern, the Empress nodded. Even over the comm screen Mashes could tell there was more she was not saying, but he did not wish to press further. Is there any more information that you gleaned from Angelique? Yes, actually. Mashes shifted before continuing. One of her ramblings before the sedatives took control was of the Sons of the Drake. Given Cetus' size and projected path of attack on the galaxy, my guess is that she is referring to a strike against Nocturne. Nocturne, the Empress asked. I have seen star maps, and while the Hive fleet is large, it is not so large to attack that deep into our territory. Cetus is an anomaly. Mashes said. It's moving faster and more erratically than we anticipated, and tends to skim smaller targets before going for the main threat. If it can trick us into sacrificing Agrax's defenses and then string us along with an attack that never comes, it can certainly mount a strike on Nocturne. There was a pause before Mashes began to fidget. At least, that is my personal opinion on the matter. I am always open to a new perspective on these matters. Remember, I never fought the Tyranids during the Great Crusade, so any information on our enemy is welcome. The Empress gave a nod before continuing. Very well. We will move the fleet to Nocturne, then perhaps the exact point of Cetus' focus will become apparent. It is a bit further north than I would like, but all plans can be modified when the time comes. Understood, Empress. Mashes replied. Would you like me to return Terra to your ship? Actually, I think it would be best if Terra remain aboard the Sanguinium Martyrs with you, at least until we reach Nocturne. The Empress gave a smile. I am seeking to improve her ability at warp communication, in the event that more adverse circumstances draw us apart as they did on Caesarea. The distance along with our warp transit should be a good test of her abilities. I see. Mashes shifted again. Wouldn't that become more difficult the closer we draw to the Tyranids? The shadow in the warp is something I have considered, yes. But I am sure that with my powers we should have no issue in communicating. As you say, the Empress nodded again before continuing. The fleet will be ready for transit in several minutes, once the rest of our reinforcements are assembled and Terra's bodyguards are reunited. Alert me if any new developments occur. And with that the Empress departed, leaving Mashes alone in the communication room. He allowed some of the tension within him to subside, palming his forehead as he contemplated their next move. Tyranids. Not the worst threat they could be facing, but perhaps one Mashes had hoped would come much later, preferably with the Empress at the head of an army magnitudes larger than what they had now. But manifesting such armies was beyond the capabilities of an inquisitor of his rank, so he had to make do with what he had. Patch me through to the nearest supply depot, access level Dominus, he said, flipping through several switches while others within the communication room did much the same. There was a pause before the silver eye of the Ordo Xenos flashed across the screen, followed soon by an older fellow in matching robes. We are at your service, my lord, the man said. I am taking my ship into Tyranid-infested space soon. Mashes said. I will need supplies ready and waiting at Nocturne for my arrival. Of course, my lord, the man nodded as further information was transmitted. Dominator class base with inquisitorial modifications, designation Sanguinium Martyrs. What weapons will you be requiring, my lord? Additional virus and phosphex torpedoes will suffice. Mashes paused, massaging his chin for a moment before speaking again. PSYK out torpedoes would be welcome as well. But almost all PSYK out weaponry was either used up just before the Emperor's ascension or is held by the Ordo Malleus, the man replied. I cannot say for certain if we can deliver any dash. I am under the Empress' direct command. Mashes snapped. As representative of the Inquisition under her name, my word trumps all but hers. If you know of the torpedoes, you get me those torpedoes. I'm sure the Ordo Malleus wouldn't mind a few released if it means the Empress is not killed by some insect. As you say, my lord, the man nodded sheepishly. I will make the necessary arrangements. The weapons you requested will be on Nocturne when you arrive. Current transit time to Nocturne is 2 months from my position. Mashes said. They better be there, or I will be the least of your concerns. With that the image winked out, Mashes staring at the spot as if daring the man to return with a rejection. He stood there long enough to see a familiar figure behind him. Mashes? Terra asked, causing him to turn around. I was wondering if you wanted to check on Angelique. She's still sedated, but it never hurts to at least visit and show you care. That's, Mashes started. I will probably visit when she's awake again, to make sure she's back to normal. This seemed to dishearten Terra, but she nodded all the same. I understand, I guess, she replied. Are you doing all right? We've been in such a rush since all this has happened. I was starting to worry that maybe things were getting out of hand. It's nothing I haven't dealt with before, Terra, Mashes said, moving past her and into the hallway. Angelique has had fits before, and she's always managed to pull through them in time. But I guess imminent danger in the form of aliens isn't always part of the issue. Terra asked. Mashes allowed a short chuckle before speaking again. Not always, no, he said. It might not seem that way, but Angelique is very good at keeping her mind clear of outside influences, Xenos or otherwise. His mirth faded. At any rate, Bianca will be on hand in case things go back to the warp. My offer of magical healing is still on the table, Terra said. A few memory spells might be enough to draw Angelique back to reality for a while. Memory spells? Mashes asked. I cannot say I am familiar with that school of psychic powers beyond mind wipes. We're not talking about mind wipes. Tara's face grew stern. Mind wipes are completely unethical in almost every school of magic I've studied, and I've studied them all at some point or another. To forcibly alter someone's mind, break a part of their soul to better suit your own ends, she shuddered. It creeps me out to even think about that, but anyway, memories. A recollection cantrip might be just the thing we need. The caster uses their own memories of the recipient to remind them of who they are and where they came from, thus breaking through any delusions or deceptions that might have been inflicted on them. I see. Mashes said. He did not, but perhaps Tara would reveal a little more information about where she learned such powers. I suppose the only problem would be that, since memory is partially based within the soul, there's always the possibility of me seeing something Angelique really doesn't want me to see, and vice versa. Tara paused for a moment. Though I suppose given how she normally processes information, I'm not sure what she'd show me. Fascinating. Mashes said. Still, there seems to be a lot of unknowns involved. Perhaps under better circumstances we can test this theory. Oh, I've done this before. There's no real danger. Tara paused again. Though, I can see your point. Maybe I can speak to the Empress and she can help set something up so the Tyranids don't interfere. Maybe. Mashes looked away. I suppose you know the Empress has asked you to stay here for the transit to Nocturne. No, I didn't. Why? She said something about practicing with longer-range communications. Mashes shrugged. Something like the communication between astropaths and similar psychers, I imagine. Oh, I can do that. Tara beamed as she continued. And it would certainly help in the event we get separated like on Caesarea. You're welcome to watch in case you want to know a little more about how psychic powers like that work, and we can always ask the Empress about the recollection cantrip then. Perhaps. The two walked in silence again, Mashes mulling over the discussion they had and the battle ahead. The Tyranids would be unrelenting, as always, and perhaps Tara's magic might give them some advantage, fleeting as it would be given the hive mind's usual effect on psychers. Maybe she could help Angelique, and then perhaps the young psycher could have a future without constant bombardment from visions, but it was still too much of a risk. Out of the corner of his eye, Mashes could have sworn he saw the shape of a clown mask leering out from the dark.